Okay, so let's go ahead and get started on our pre-recorded week 3 webinar. So if I do have an independent study, I will, or if you are involved in an independent study, I will be sort of highlighting those differences as we go through this webinar. So let's go ahead and get started on week 3. So our agenda is just some general class stuff, which I'll go over very quickly because we've already done that, and then go through the week 3 assignments right afterward. Okay, so when will grades be posted? The Tuesday or after the week after the class ends. So you might want to remember that the last week of class, all assignments are due on Saturday at 11:59 p.m., which is quite possibly a little bit different than the first 3 weeks, which everything's due on at 11:59 p.m. on Sunday. So the last week of class assignments are due a day early, just to keep that in mind. Also, all grades are posted at the same time, so if we're waiting for one student, everybody's kind of waiting for that student to finish up so I can post grades. But also, like I said, if you need a little bit of extra time, sometimes it's very easy to just grant you a little bit of time because I'm just finishing grading other things up and things like that. So I can let you know how much extra time we have, if there's any wiggle room for that kind of thing. Discussion boards. For week 3, we actually don't have any discussion boards, so don't have to worry about that for this week. And then I do have a website in there that does have some information that might be helpful. I'll possibly highlight that as we get to those assignments. So let's go ahead and continue moving on. The week 4 webinar, the one coming up, will be basically a pre-record presentation of your e-portfolio. So you might want to take a peek at week 4. It's a little bit of a heavy week, actually. There's quite a few assignments and whatnot. So you might want to take a peek at that when you get a chance, just to kind of, maybe get a head start on things, because it's a little bit intense. So basically, you'll be recording yourself, presenting your e-portfolio, which you can look ahead at week 4 to learn more about that. And if you have any questions, you can, of course, let me know. You'll need to be sharing that recording with me so that I can share it with the rest of the class. If you're involved in an independent study, that may be pretty easy to do because you might just, send it to one another or whatnot. But I'll, of course, want to get a recording of it as well. And then I can arrange someplace either with an independent study or a full class that we can share those e-recordings with one another. So basically, you're going to want to use some sort of screen capturing software. It could be something like Screencast-O-Matic or other pieces of software to essentially capture what you're presenting on your computer screen with kind of a voiceover, or you might have, if you want to, you can have like some of those screen capturing applications will let you put yourself in like the bottom corner or whatnot. It's your choice, but you might want to start looking at that as well. And then if you have questions, I can point you in the direction of some good, applications there. Okay, rubrics, you know about rubrics. So I'll just kind of pass over those. You just want to check those rubrics. This week we're talking about summative assessment. So we want to be thinking about what is summative assessment. Basically, it's after a unit is done. So I kind of like to look at it, a very simplified version of it is a formative assessment might be a quiz, like I teach 6th grade math. So it might be a quiz halfway through the chapter, and it kind of gives you an idea, you as the teacher and also the students, an idea of whether or not they're getting the material halfway through before we actually take the test. That would be a formative assessment, but then the test at the end of the chapter that goes over everything to see if they really understood that material, that's more of a summative assessment. Okay, and then you might be thinking about, when can summative assessment be more formative? So what are some situations maybe where summative assessment can actually be formative? Formative being to help you understand what you don't maybe need some help on or whatnot to prepare for something in the future possibly, or some sort of other formative assessment, or to just go over maybe some things that you need to need a little bit of help on, or your students need a little bit of help on. And then how can we assess using online tools? So you might want to think about that one. I like to use Google Forms as a good way to assess my students. Google Forms has really grown in the past couple of years, so it's pretty powerful. So if you haven't checked that out, it's probably worth checking out. And there's also things like Kahoot, possibly even Quizlet, things like that. Quiz I think, is another one of them. So there's all kinds of online tools that we can be considering as we're going through this material this week. Class readings, don't forget about those class readings. There's a ton of information there. And then let's go ahead and get right into the assignment. So your first assignment is going to be an interview assignment. This is the one I think that I mentioned last week, where you're going to be interviewing somebody probably at the district level. And there are some questions in the class website. I'll see if I can bring those up really quickly. Okay, so here I brought up our class website, and you can see you're interviewing someone that is involved in the data evaluation or assessment, probably at your district office, like I mentioned. And these are the questions that you're going to be asking that person. So then you're going to be writing up a paper on that. So, and then just make sure you read these things because there's a couple of steps in there. Okay, and then moving on. So our next assignment is you're going to actually be creating an assessment using some sort of digital tool. So I mentioned Kahoot and Google Forms. Those are two good tools that you can use to create an assessment. There is a list of tools in the assignment explanation. So if we go back over here, here's the explanation right there. And if you click on this document right there, I'll see if that'll open in the background there. But there's a list of tools, but you're basically going to be creating an assessment using one of those tools in there. I mentioned a couple of them. Kahoot is one of them. Google Forms is one of them. Those are two of my favorites right there. But there's a whole bunch of them in here if you want to take a look and see what some examples are. So if you just click on that document that I just clicked on, this is taking a little bit to open up, but you'll hopefully see that in a moment here. Okay, and here's that list. So there's a whole list of digital tools that you can use. There are some possibilities that you can use. So there's some very good examples right here of things that you can try there. Okay, all right. So continuing, let's see. So lots of free tools out there. You're basically just creating that assessment, and then we're going to do a webinar reflection for this one. And as you remember, this is not a formal paper. It's just a few paragraphs, and it's just a reflection on this webinar that we have right here. If you're an independent study, you're definitely watching this webinar, this pre-recorded webinar. If it's a larger class, we will most likely be having a live webinar that you'll be involved in. So there is that assignment right there. And then, like I mentioned just a little bit ago, you may want to take a peek at next week. It's a pretty intense week, so you're going to want to probably take a peek at that. And that's about it for this week. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. You should have my contact information. And have a great week. Thank you very much.